Believe it or not, some of the most successful people on the planet battle anxiety. People like Adele, Michael Phelps, Ryan Reynolds, and Emma Stone all deal with it. That's right, they're just like you or me. They're constantly worrying about everything going wrong, obsessing over their mistakes, comparing themselves to others, and struggling to accept praise. So today we're going to look at what successful warriors do to counteract their anxiety and live happy and successful lives. Many of these insights come from the book The Anxious Achiever, Turn Your Biggest Fears into Your Leadership Superpower, and Feeling Good, The New Mood Therapy and Feeling Good Handbook. And if you'd like to read these 272-page or 706-page books, or listen to either of them on Audible, I'll include links in the description. But if you want to save some time, because let's be honest, most of you guys are not going to read a 700-page book, I'll briefly explain the lessons I learned from these books and how these principles really helped me and can probably help you too. So if learning about ways to handle anxiety at work sounds interesting, and you think mental health should be talked about more on the internet, hit that subscribe button and hit that like button, and let's talk about how to handle anxiety at work. Anyone can fall into what psychologists call thought traps, or what fancy people call cognitive distortion. These are patterns of untrue and negatively biased thoughts so ingrained in our psyche that these thoughts seem to arise automatically to ensnare us the second they have the opportunity. When these thoughts come, we can't see clearly, communicate effectively, or make good decisions. Anxious high achievers frequently fall into these spirals of these negative thought patterns. To cope, some resort to excessive work, while others turn to drinking or drugs or passive-aggressive behavior or video games. However, there are more effective ways to cope. The first step is understanding which of the 11 primary thought traps you're most prone to, and there may be a couple that you're really prone to. Once you've learned to recognize your negative thought patterns, then you can take intentional research-backed steps to help yourself cope in a healthier and happier way. The first trap is the all or nothing trap. According to Dr. Burns, you know that guy who wrote the 700-page book? The all or nothing trap is when we view things as either black or white. You know the thought whenever something doesn't go perfectly and we're like, oh, this is a complete failure. A classic example of a time where this trap rears its ugly head is the job interview process. We often walk out of an interview obsessing over that one little goof up we made or that perfect response that we didn't say. And we're like, oh, that whole thing was an absolute train wreck. But come on, let's be real. 99% of the time, if someone had been watching that interview, they would have not thought it was a train wreck. Sure, you wish you would have changed a few things, but overall it wasn't that bad. A super effective way to tackle the all or nothing thinking is to swap out the word or with the word and. Nothing is ever good or bad. Everything has a good and bad moment. If you're having a hard time recognizing the good, it can be really helpful to talk it over with a trusted friend and ask them to help you identify the good to go along with the bad moments. The second trap is the labeling trap. Labeling is an extreme form of the all or nothing thinking. Instead of saying, I made a mistake, you attach a negative label to yourself like, I'm a loser. This is obviously faulty thinking. For example, take any star wide receiver in the NFL, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, DeAndre Hopkins, and say they drop a catch. Does this mean that they're automatically bad wide receivers, losers, or failures? Of course not. Even the absolute best at any craft make mistakes. We all have our own favorite go-to labels when it comes to criticizing ourselves. It's the difference between saying, I'm a failure, and I occasionally fail. The same thing occurs when you label others. If you see them as a bad person rather than a person who made a bad decision, it becomes very difficult to work together, improve the situation, or mentor them. Is a single bad choice really proof that you're an idiot? Of course not. Everybody makes mistakes and messes up, even the smartest people. You can also document the opposing view, and that can really help too. Is there any evidence to indicate that you're not an idiot? You have to be honest with yourself here, but I'm pretty sure you'll find plenty of things that show you're not stupid. And if all else fails, you can hold to the fact that you are currently trying to educate yourself here on YouTube, and idiots don't do that. The third trap is the jumping to conclusions trap, which can take two main forms. The first is fortune telling, which involves predicting that things will turn out badly, even if there's no proof to support that belief. This thinking can lead to inaction because why bother trying if you're just going to fail anyway? The second, in my opinion, most common is when you mind read and arbitrarily conclude that someone is reacting negatively to you, even if they may not be. Like, for example, he doesn't think I deserve a promotion because he didn't put a smiley face at the end of that Slack message. Or if you nod to your coworker as you're walking down the hall and she doesn't smile back, thinking that you hate her. This also happens a lot in dating. When someone takes a while to respond to your text, the jumping to conclusion trap springs into effect. Oh, she must not like me, or oh, he must be with another girl. We all know this is silly, but I know I still fall for it. So how do we counteract jumping to conclusions? Well, we can ask ourselves the obvious questions of, do I really have access to their inner thoughts? Or can I really know what's going to happen in the future? If neither of those questions help, you can also remind yourself of times in the past when you jumped to conclusions and were proven very, very wrong. The fourth trap is the catastrophizing trap. This thought trap involves reaching the worst possible conclusion based on little or no evidence. Examples of this are stuff like, you have a cough and a fever, and according to your research on WebMD, you're gonna die. A disagreement with your boyfriend or girlfriend is signaling the end of your relationship. Or a correction by your manager means you're getting fired next month. The catastrophizing trap causes us to always expect the worst case scenario, no matter what the issue is. In all these examples, your rational mind knows that it's highly improbable, but when caught in this thought trap, even the most far-fetched scenario feels plausible. Now, if you're struggling to break free from this irrationality logically, reach out to an unbiased friend or coworker who can help you see things clearly. Even moving the expectations slightly away from disaster can be a huge help and prompt your brain to refocus and return to being productive and happy. Remember, concentrate on what you can achieve in the short term instead of worrying about what might happen months or even years down the line. I know that I often struggle with this when posting videos to YouTube. When one video doesn't do well, I get really discouraged and think this whole project of building a YouTube channel to help people learn more about the business world in a non-clickbaity and really educational way is gonna fail. But when I apply these tricks to help reduce my anxiety, I realize that a few videos not getting a bunch of views really isn't catastrophic for my channel, let alone my overall life situation. The fifth trap is the filtering trap. This is when you pick out one single negative detail and dwell on it exclusively so all the other good gets overshadowed. As an example of my own personal life, this is like when after a dance competition, I get lots of positive feedback, but I ignore it and instead obsess over one other dancer's critical comment. It made the performance a lot less fun and it didn't do me any good. Of course, the reverse can also happen too. Some people focus on what's going right and turn a blind eye to everything that isn't, but you and I, being anxious achievers, are more likely to dwell on the negative and fail to recognize all the good things we do well. This filtering leads us to feel discouraged or even hopeless. A practical way to break out of this trap is to keep a record of all of your accomplishments and the praise you receive. This way you'll have solid evidence of your great work and you can look back on it when you're feeling swamped, unsure, or insecure. Plus, having an accomplishment log like this makes self-evaluations for work and performance reviews a breeze and really quick. The sixth trap is the discounting the positive trap. This thought trap is really similar to filtering, but it's important to call out because it shows up so frequently in anxious achievers. I've heard so many people dismiss their successes by insisting that they were just a fluke, resulted from luck or good timing, or that anyone could have accomplished what they did. This may appear to be humility and thus not as harmful as some of the other traps, but it can cause big problems if it prevents you from building on your successes or trying something new. For example, I helped start a small business called Peak Nights. It's a country swing dance club every Friday and Saturday night, and it's gone from having about 50 people a weekend 2 years ago to now averaging 500 plus people every single weekend. It's become a really fun part of the community where I live, and it's been pretty profitable too. Now, could I ascribe its growth to luck? Me just happening to see a niche in the dance scene here in Utah? Absolutely. I could also think, oh well, anyone could have done this. And yes, these things can all be really good to keep my head from getting too big, but if self-depreciation on these topics goes too far, it could prevent me from trying some other crazy idea like, I don't know, starting a YouTube channel. The seventh trap is the should statements trap. Examples of this extremely common thought trap, which occurs pretty much whenever reality hasn't met our high hopes or expectations, are pretty much endless. These are negative thoughts like, I should really be farther along in my career by now, or it shouldn't be so hard to get ahead in this company, or I really should know better. Statements that include the word should or its close relatives like must, ought to, and have to can really hurt your mood and motivation. When you first find yourself making a should statement, instead try reframing it in a gentler and less demanding way. For example, instead of thinking, I should be farther along in my career by now, try saying, I'd like to be farther along in my career right now, but what can I do to get there? Then think of whether there are actions that you could actually take to fix the problem. If there are, pursue them. That's awesome. If there aren't, you may have to come to peace that your should statement is pretty unrealistic. For example, if I think, I really shouldn't be making $30 million a year right now as a professional quarterback, I should probably rephrase my expectations and just let it go. The eighth trap is the social comparison trap. Comparing yourself with others is particularly dangerous, especially when it results in fatalistic self-assessments like, she'll always be prettier than me, or he'll always have more subscribers than I do. At work, the result is an unhealthy competition and heightened anxiety, which hurts pretty much everyone in an organization. In order to reset, turn comparison into curiosity. For example, think, oh wow, that's really interesting how they do that. Maybe I should try that way. The key is to focus on being your best self rather than getting anxious and distracted by others' achievements. For example, if I see someone else just hit 100,000 subscribers, I should be super happy about that. I shouldn't get sad because I'm only at 422 subscribers right now, and Graham Stephan is at 4 million. I should just be doing my best to be my best self. So if you want to help me get better at YouTube, consider subscribing or leave a comment on something you think I could do better. Anyway, on to trap number 9. The 9th trap is the personalization and blaming trap. These are opposite expressions of the same error in thinking. Personalization occurs when you hold yourself responsible for circumstances and actions that are far out of your control. For example, if one of your direct reports or students or children are struggling, you take it as evidence that you're a bad manager, teacher, or parent. Blaming, by contrast, consists of attributing the problem entirely to others. It's your employees, your students, or your child's fault that he can't handle the workload, the coursework, or the rules of the house. You can't seem to understand why he doesn't observe the same high standards that you do. A healthier response is recognizing that the truth probably lies somewhere in between these two extremes. You both have responsibility. In a situation like the one we just talked about, you should meet with your employee, your student, or your kid and ask him what he thinks might be causing the problem, and then work together to find a solution. The 10th trap is the ruminating trap. The ruminating trap is defined by non-stop obsessive thoughts we have about negative stuff from the past, problems we're facing right now, or things we're worried about in the future. It's a huge anxiety booster and is really common. Like, who hasn't replayed a thoughtless remark, a poor decision, a rough presentation, or a failed project in their mind like 100 times? Now, what makes rumination negative is that it doesn't give us new ways to think, act, or solve problems. It just goes over the same stuff again and again and again, keeping us stuck in this negative mindset. One way to interrupt ruminating is by writing your thoughts down so you can better see when they're illogical or irrational. You can also distract your mind by starting a conversation about something entirely unrelated with a coworker, or giving yourself an activity that really takes up a lot of your mental process to distract yourself. Tricking your brain into thinking about something else is really important to stop ruminating. The 11th trap is the emotional reasoning trap. This trap can be summed up as, I feel, therefore it must be true. For example, if I feel terrified about going on airplanes, I may conclude that it must be very dangerous to fly. But any psychologist will tell you that feelings are actually a product of your thoughts and beliefs. And if all of our thoughts are biased, the emotions we're experiencing because of them won't reflect reality. At work, emotional reasoning might show up as thinking that being really overwhelmed by my workload means that I'm not capable of handling my job. Unfortunately, reasoning based on emotions without facts can drive you to an unhealthy response and therefore become self-fulfilling. For example, if you react to feeling overwhelmed with avoidance and procrastination, you made a bad situation worse. Instead, as with other thought traps, you must do what you can to get out of your own head. Your feelings of incompetence, for example, or my plane analogy, can either be solved by a friend that will help you point out that you're not incompetent, or looking up on the internet that planes are actually safer than cars. And that's all 11 traps. It's a big list, I know, and it'll take time to identify and learn how to keep yourself from falling into these traps. And that's totally okay. But I know that recognizing when you're falling into one of these 11 traps will help you be happier and more successful at work. If you'd like to read the books where I got a lot of these insights from, you can click on the links in the description. And if you like this video and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing so you can see 2 well-researched long-form videos like this one every single week. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.